Happy Monday, Liberty Lions, and if you like to start your day, like I do, with a cup of coffee, I've got something amazing to tell you about. And if you don't, well, this probably just isn't the pre-roll advertisement for you. I would recommend just skipping ahead about a minute, and, I'm not going to waste your time. If you don't like coffee, I'm not going to convince you in the next 45 seconds. But if you do, I do hope you'll try out our amazing new coffee brand called The Morning Roar. We have partnered with our friends at Anarcho Coffee to bring you this delicious medium dark roast. And when I say delicious, I am not pulling your chain, my friends. I actually consume this coffee myself. I imbibe it, I take a little sip, and I make that sound, and I know that I am now ready to start my day. I'm ready to roar my day away with the Morning Roar. So please do check it out at lionsofliberty.com/coffee. You'll get 10% off your first order, and if you join our Patreon at $10 or higher, you will get a hefty 15% discount. And trust me, that discount is going to add up once you try this coffee. It is absolutely fantastic. Again, that's lionsofliberty.com/coffee. You'll also find links to everything you need over in today's show notes, which you can find at lionsofliberty.com/414. It's time to start your day, just like the Lions of Liberty do, with a morning roar.
Liberty Podcast. Here's your host, your guide, your shining beacon of liberty, Marc Claire.
My guest today is the host of the Brian Nichols Show, a part of the We Are Libertarians network. Good friends of ours over there. I'm very pleased to welcome, you guessed it, it's Brian Nichols. Brian, are you ready to roar?
Marc, I was born ready to roar, especially since you were on my show last time. I've been waiting for this moment to go, yes, Marc Claire, I am ready to roar.
You've been waiting since you were born. That's what I heard.
100%. On tax day, no less.
Was that your birthday?
Unfortunately, yes. April 15th.
Wow.
I was my parents' little tax deduction.
Do you celebrate harder on those years when it's like pushed back because of a weekend to like the 17th or anything like that?
I really am not a big birthday guy, to my detriment sometimes. Birthdays never really do it for me. I don't know. I've always been like, it's a day. But I celebrate a little bit inside knowing that it's funny being a libertarian and being born on tax day, but that's kind of my little internal monologue that goes off there.
Right. Well, you don't need to necessarily start at your day of birth, but why don't we get to know you a little bit better and find out more about your background, how you first got into politics, and how you got interested in these ideas of liberty that we spend so much time discussing. You can start at your day of birth if you think it's appropriate. I'm going to let you decide how deep you want to go.
Maybe not my day of birth, but definitely it starts with my younger days in my family. My dad was an elected official for my home district in our county legislature. So growing up, pretty much for 15 years of my early life, it was my dad in office and me being the kid of an elected official. So it was unique to be able to see things kind of behind the scenes, but also to get to meet a lot of these really, at the time, prominent names in politics, and some of whom are still prominent names in politics. With him being the chair of the board for our home county, I got to interact with people like our sitting congressman at the time, John McHugh, who later became Obama's Secretary of the Army, Hillary Clinton, Chuck Schumer. I got to meet them all in person. Met a lot of people running on the campaigns, from Rick Lazio back in 2000 versus Hillary Clinton, to working on some campaigns for New York State Assembly and for U.S. Congress. So I really just was born into this world of politics, and I loved it. I mean, the ideas were fascinating, and the fact that people were able to get elected, and really they're the ones making the decisions that will impact what my community is going to be like. It was really cool from that perspective. But I decided I was going to go to college and focus on political campaigns, and I was going to be a campaign manager. And I was going to be one of the best of the best. And I got 2 years in college, and then I went and I actually was on a congressional campaign as the body guy. And I was like, woo, I do not want to do this, because this is intense. I mean, the life on a political campaign, for people who have never been on a political campaign, it's grueling. It's exhausting. I was working pretty much 20-hour days, 7 days a week, no real personal time, no times off, anything like that. You were sick one day, you wore a mask, like you kept on powering through. But no, after I finished the congressional campaign as the body guy, I kind of reevaluated what I wanted to do, and I decided I was going to go more into PR, marketing, that kind of realm. But my love for politics remained, and I found myself getting more and more disaffected with the Republican Party. And at the time, I was more of the traditional neocon Republican, if you will, just because that was what I grew up and experienced. But it was at that point I started to say, well, something doesn't feel right. Something inside me is not matching what I'm seeing on the debate stage, or that I'm seeing being promoted by these politicians or these elected officials, or just GOP leadership. And I started doing more research, and then all of a sudden I heard Rand Paul speak. And it's funny because most people who joined the libertarian movement were from Ron Paul, but I actually kind of found libertarianism by accident through his son. And listening to him is actually when he was doing the filibuster for, I think it was at the time, the unwarranted surveillance of our U.S. citizens. It was that one, or is his one against the dronings? I can't remember which one it was. But I was like, wow. Yeah, he's done a couple, and you know what? Thank God for Rand Paul. He definitely deserves some criticism sometimes for his positions, but I mean, he has been one of the most staunch liberty advocates we've had in the U.S. Senate, especially right now in an era of Trump. But neither here nor there. Talking more about my progression, I guess, if you will, it was looking at Rand Paul, and then starting to say, okay, oh wait, he's Ron Paul's son. Doing some more research there, and realizing, oh wait, Ron Paul is the guy back in 2008 or 2007, I guess. That I remember watching on the debate stage who said something to Rudy Giuliani about not being overseas, and I was like, oh, that's interesting, but I didn't really remember who he was, and now it kind of all came full circle. And that, I mean, honestly, Mark, that was the tipping point. Then I started to go down the rabbit hole of libertarian podcasts and libertarian videos, and lo and behold, here I am today, 5 years later with a libertarian podcast of my own.
So did you end up doing what a lot of us did, only a lot of people of, I guess, my liberty generation, so to speak, who got inspired more by Ron Paul? Did you, we became obsessed with all these YouTube videos, sharing them around, going on these deep rabbit holes into his other video. You find yourself watching like his Morton Downey Jr. appearances from the 80s. Did you end up doing that just, I guess, maybe like a few years after a lot of us?
Yeah, it was funny too, because I would share with people who I was like, I think they might be libertarian. I'm like, did you see his video? They're like, Brian, we saw it like 5 years ago. And I was like, oh,
like, where you been, dude?
Yeah, it's still really good. But that was, I mean, definitely going down that rabbit hole, and it was like, I don't know, it's like Christmas every day almost, because you're being exposed to so many things that you're like, that makes sense. That's what I've been thinking, but I didn't know how to verbalize it. And it was just, every single day I was like, I was learning something so new, but so captivating, and it really embodied what I believed at the core of my beliefs and my principles. And I just didn't realize that it had a name to it, and it had a community around it of like-minded people. So, all of a sudden, instead of being the weirdo libertarian, now I'm part of this community of people who are like-minded, and they share these beliefs, and we can discuss these beliefs in a way that most people wouldn't understand. But we, I mean, I listen to your show. I'm sure we listen to like Chris Spangle over at We're Libertarians. Like we're all so into this. It's a part of who we are, because, I mean, really, libertarianism is the idea of not hurting people and not taking their stuff, as Matt Kibbe likes to say. So to really see a political ideology in some, with respect to the Libertarian Party, a political party that embody the basics that we're taught from our mom when we're 3 years old. Don't hurt somebody and don't take their stuff. That was just really cool, because it made sense, and that kind of made me want to just start to tell everybody else, much to my detriment at some points in times. Thanksgiving table is not necessarily the time to talk about Ron Paul and all his great work with a neocon family, but neither here nor there. It was still just, it was so cool to be able to get into this brand new world that I didn't really know existed.
As you went along this progression and sort of went down these various rabbit holes, did you find yourself facing certain areas of resistance just internally? Are there certain things that were so ingrained in your neocon views, I guess, as you described them, that you found yourself saying, well, I like a lot of what they're saying, but this one thing, hold on, I got to sit back and think about this for a minute.
Oh, no, for sure. And you know what, Mark? Honestly, there's still some things that I remember learning as I was growing up that I still have trouble like reconciling my new libertarian beliefs, if you will, over the past 5 years or so, to make those make sense. So one of them for sure is, the idea of national, like, identity. You were an American. I fun fact about me, I actually love to sing. And back when I was in high school, I sang at a talent show. I did God Bless the USA. That was like my song. And I was like, God bless you. Like, that was just, rah, rah, Republican. I saw Lee Greenwood sing it live, and, I became even more of an American that day. And
the important question is, does video of this exist?
I'm sure it's out there somewhere. God, I hope not, but I'm sure it's out there somewhere.
All right, well, we're putting out the call. Friends and family of Brian Nichols, or anybody that went to whatever you were at the time.
Oh yeah, good old Showtime back in the day.
There may be a bounty for this. Maybe a free month of Lions of Liberty Patreon, maybe.
I promise, folks, if you really want to see me sing, you can go ahead and watch my a cappella group videos from back when I was in college. But no, no.
Well, now I'm really intrigued.
I dug my hole too deep there. But no.
All right, we're gonna link to some of the stuff on the show notes. Now that you brought it up.
Oh yeah, I had some solos. See, I'm just gonna keep on giving you a little bit here and there. I'm like the Bob Murphy of like the We Are Libertarians Lions of Liberty group. But no, anyways, back to the main question, and really, it's the idea of self-identifying as an American and being patriotic, and the idea of I still have trouble with borders. Honestly, I understand the libertarian argument. I get it. I just still have problems like trying to get my brain to say, but how does it really work in practicality? And I'm sure libertarians who are open borders have to challenge themselves every now and then as well. And I think that's a good thing, having those mental gymnastics and trying to figure out why you believe something, and not necessarily not mental gymnastics, but when you're trying to figure out and really hone down what the principle is that leads you to a certain belief. And if it's a consistent application of that principle, with me, I know open borders is the common sense, rational, logical application of libertarian ideals, and based on the free movement of people and the free markets. But then I'm like, well, right now things aren't like that, and the welfare state, and it's hard because I understand where we want to get to, and logically it makes sense, but with a world of people who aren't libertarians, who don't care about our principles, it makes it hard to implement those and actually see the true freeness around them maintained.
Yeah, I think the big problem with the border discussion from the libertarian perspective right now is that, especially in our current dialogue with Trump and all the all the attention around the issue right now, we're always looking at it through the statist lens. So we're either talking about closed borders or tight border controls controlled by the state, or we're talking about wide open borders controlled by the state. So either way, we're talking about a big state program, and I think it's really hard to for us to wrap around the principles of what a really truly more libertarian society would, where a lot of the stuff is just based on the property rights specifically of those property owners. If people want to keep people out of their property, or communities want to do that, they can set up kind of whatever quote unquote border controls they want, and vice versa. They can also not. Whereas today, that is really just entirely up to the state, at least when it comes to these sort of imaginary lines that make us a country. And I think something you mentioned before is something else that causes problems. Like it gives us sort of mental blocks. Like we grow up being proud to be Americans. You want to be proud from the place you're from.
Oh, absolutely.
Even myself as a libertarian, like who doesn't really believe in countries or the concept of it, I'm proud to be here. Like there's a lot of things about the founding of the country, a lot of principles, not all of them, but a lot of principles that I agree with, and I'm proud to be from a place where a lot of those values are there. At the same time, from a libertarian perspective, it can be really hard to reconcile the idea of open borders or not, because technically speaking, like without borders, you don't really have a country, and there is no America to be proud of. So it is a bit of a mental. I think gymnastics is actually appropriate, because gymnastics is a form of exercise that is very strenuous, and thinking about this stuff can be very strenuous on our brains. But it's important to exercise our liberty brains, I guess you could say, to get closer to finding the truth, or finding our own truth, or coming to our own sort of conclusions on these things. But at the end of the day, I think the fact that so much of the political dialogue is just simply through the statist lens really makes the conversation difficult, especially when talking to non-libertarians who aren't even going to be at a place to really even get what we're talking about.
Yep. Oh, 100%. And that's so I'm not sure when this is going to air, but I actually just had a conversation with Arvin Vora, and Arvin is someone who my second episode on the Brian Nichols Show was saying how bad Arvin Vora was for the libertarian movement, and it wasn't because of his beliefs; it's the way he promotes the beliefs. And so I think if we can take from our conversation we just had about the principles and how it's hard for us to rectify it, I think we need as libertarians to understand that when we talk to people who are not libertarians, we're doing to them what we've done to ourselves, and that is trying to rectify our own beliefs and why we believe something and logically make it work. We're doing that to them, but we're doing it real time, and they're having to answer to somebody else. And it's difficult to have a conversation with someone who's outside the libertarian sphere of influence, or outside of our libertarian echo chambers, when we approach it from a position of, you're wrong and here's why I'm right. I'm much more in the camp Marc, of building bridges and trying to have like these conversations with people that I know I'm not going to agree with 100% of the time, but just to understand why they think the way they think and to just show them a different way of thinking without shoving it down their throat. I mean, that's kind of how I got to libertarianism, was listening to one of my friends in college recommend looking more at Rand Paul. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll give him a look. And it allowed me to have that progression myself. Whereas if you're just telling somebody, you're a public school teacher, well, you suck. You're similar to that of, a rapist because you're using the force of government to give yourself a job and you're taking kids and you're forcing education on them without consent. Like, okay, logically that's right, and principally that's right based on our libertarian beliefs, but that's no way to make someone a convert into libertarianism. That's going to turn them off right from the onset. So one thing I definitely think libertarians in general should do more frequently is get outside of our libertarian echo chambers, get out of your Facebook groups, get out of your Twitter threads, and go talk to people in real life who you, number one, maybe don't know what their beliefs are, or someone who believes something different than you do, and just have a conversation. Like, that's the way we're going to be able to change hearts and minds, not by shaming them, but by actually trying to relate to them on a common level and actually have a conversation and find commonalities, or at the very least areas we disagree, but we can understand where each other's coming from. Because the reality is, we're not evil people. Like, on either side of the aisle, like the left thinks that the right is evil, the right thinks the left is evil. Like, no, we all see the problems that exist. We just have fundamentally different reasons we believe the solutions that we promote would work. And I think it's important for libertarians to say, listen, in a libertarian society, you can try your solution on your own in your own respective area and see if it works voluntarily. Don't force somebody else to do it. You can still be a socialist in a libertarian society, but you can't be a libertarian in a social society. Libertarians give people the opportunity to make their own decisions voluntarily. That's why I've kind of morphed more towards like a voluntarist more recently, because I think that's going to be the way that we actually, again, change people's hearts and minds, but then actually make real substantive change for, real life problems that we see exist. That's why organizations like crowdfunded government are so important. Mathbot.com, like, these are real solutions being made by libertarians that are now helping solve a really common problem that we see in America, whether it's, finding ways to fund these different organizations or finding ways to teach kids math. Like, I sucked at math. Marc, I don't know about you, but I sucked at it. So, like,
I was okay in high school, but I've tailed off since then.
So, like, just the fact that, like, the market gave a solution to a very real problem like our education system, it's encouraging to me, and we can look back as libertarians and say, look, we did that. There's some wins here we have, and I think we should be proud of that and tell people and explain what we did to help solve the issues that they see out in their, in their communities.
Hey friends, I got to take a quick pause here to tell you about another great libertarian podcast out there. It's called Free Man Beyond the Wall, hosted by the artist formerly known as Mance Raider, now known simply by his real name of Pete Raymond. And I gotta tell you, Pete is a machine. This guy brings you a new episode of his own every single Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and he has done some absolutely fantastic in-depth interviews. He's had on everybody from Ron Paul to Thaddeus Russell to Phil Labonte, the lead singer of All That Remains, a very diverse group of guests, not always libertarians. He also did a great show with a Washington, D.C. insider lobbyist revealing a lot of the dirt that goes on behind the scenes in DC. He has done so many interviews that I have just said, darn, I wish I did this one myself. So I really do want to highly recommend checking out Free Man Beyond the Wall. You can find it over at freemanbeyondthewall.com, as well as iTunes, Stitcher, and all those fancy podcatchers out there. And what you're describing there, Brian, is the real skill, and that is the real ultimate skill for libertarians, is combining our libertarian engineer nerdy mind that kind of got us logically or rationally to believe in the things we do and to believe them to be the correct views, and then merging those with actual social skills and understanding persuasion.
Be a sales guy.
Yeah, and those really do use like different personalities are usually able to really excel at those separate things. So it really is a challenge, I think, for people that end up believing these things to then translate them to the normies, so to speak. But I guess that's one of the reasons I started my podcast, is I just wanted to be able to talk about these ideas in a better way. And I think if I listened to Marc 6 years ago compared to Marc now, well, at least I hope there's an improvement. I guess I'm not the most subjective judge of it, but I like to think I've improved a little bit, and that really is the skill, though, learning to speak to these ideas and learning to speak in a way that isn't condescending, that isn't trying to shove them down people's throats. Because once people feel like you're forcing their way on them or trying to prove them right or wrong, I think we had a similar conversation when you interviewed me, actually. So maybe this is just sort of our wheelhouse. But, once people feel like they're being forced to believe something or forced to accept something because someone is so much more right than them, it's just going to be their natural reaction to reject it, even if it's logically a sound argument.
100%. I mean, I think we can all think of at least one instances in our entire lives where we are adamant about something to the point of being forceful that actually got us the result we wanted. Other times it's a complete and utter failure. And I think that's a problem, is that the Libertarian Party has a lot of these people who, like you said, are the engineers. They're the behind the scenes guys that are making the machine work. They're giving us they're giving us their interpretations, or they're explaining in layman's terms what the different thinkers of, Rothbard, Hayek, Milton Friedman down the road, just going through and helping us be able to understand it better. But then when you say, okay, now tell that to somebody who's not a libertarian, it's like the error light goes on and they're like, oh, I don't know how to say anything. And it's on us now, the other people, the sales folks, to actually sell the product. And I think that's something that libertarians just in general, by and large, have to accept. That's just life. I mean, I'll give you an example. In my day job, I do telecom sales. The guys I bring on to a meeting who are, called system engineers, they're explaining the brains of how this stuff works. And then it's on the salesperson's job to sell the value of that to the customer. Libertarians are just too often saying, well, look at all the fancy things that this can do, instead of saying, this is why this is valuable to your life and your community. So let the sales guys be sales guys. Let the engineers be the engineers. And instead of trying to be, the one person who wears many different hats, embrace your hat. If you're good at doing the research and good at explaining it in a way to libertarians, then by all means, focus more on that. And if you're someone who understands the concepts on a high level and can talk to people, you have really good personal social skills, then be the mouthpieces. Go and talk to people. Go set up a table at a county fair or something, or a local flea market. Be different and actually reach out to people in your community. You're gonna find, folks. And I'm sorry to go a little monologue here, Mark, but
rant away. This makes my job easier. You kidding me?
Oh man, as a host, it's always fun. But if you were to actually see the value of your impact in your local community relative to your vote on a national scale, it's infinitely more valuable for you to be more involved in your community, because these are people you're living with on a day-to-day basis. If you're a very successful business owner in your community and you're very well respected, then run for office. And I know, I'll get the libertarian or the ANCAPs who are any form of voting is extortion or violence or whatever.
I am going to title this episode "Why Brian Nichols is a Statist," but other than that, I don't think I'll get much pushback.
By all means, please. I've been called much worse. But to see now, okay, here's a well-respected person in our community and someone who's very successful, and they're a libertarian and now they're our mayor. That's going to be so much more valuable in showing people on a real life basis how libertarian ideals work than having some radical person run for U.S. president, shout some crazy, hysterical things are going to get people's attention, but they're negative. And it's going to turn them off from being more interested in it. I mean, think, Gary, what was he known for? What is Aleppo? That was just a situation where the libertarian candidate was destined to fail. But I
thought he was known for being really stoned all the time.
Oh, that too. And I will say,
it's probably a connection.
On a side, when he did that debate, I forget what the event was, but he did a debate against somebody who was pro marijuana. Ban, or I guess keeping it banned, essentially, illegalization, if you will. And she was talking about how it was giving people heart attacks, and he faked his heart attack on stage and fell off the chair. No moment beyond that will ever be better for Gary Johnson. That was his all-star moment of all time.
Yeah, it was great.
But no, anyways, back to my point is really, at the end of the day, get involved in your communities. That's the way libertarians are going to be able to change hearts and minds from a true policy perspective. Is really showing how it will help people in their day-to-day lives. If you can get your I don't know, your fire department privatized, let's just say, I don't know, and people are like, oh, well, that's less money I'm spending, but we're getting higher quality service from the fire department. That will spark off some ideas in people's minds, why is this happening? So if we can get off the internet and stop just being the we know everything libertarians, and actually just try to get into our communities and relate to people on a person-to-person basis. I mean, I think we're going to have so much more success than we have, when we're sitting on Facebook or Twitter.
For sure. Any way you can relate to people and not just as this guy trying to convince you of this crazy thing he believes, the better. And there are several types of communities you can build. There's your actual community, like your actual neighbors that you see every day, and there's other types of communities. You and I both have communities, sort of in the podcast realm.
Yeah.
So I want to pivot to that a little bit and just discuss a little bit about why on this political journey, what convinced you fairly recently to dive to, I guess, take your beliefs and the things you were talking about out there in the real world and translate them into podcast form. As we know, there's not that many libertarian podcasts out there. So, well, I laugh, but when I started mine, that was actually true. And that's why I started mine, because I couldn't find that many, at least regularly posted libertarian podcasts. And then, this guy, Tom Wood, started one around the same time. So that became untrue very quickly. But there weren't a ton. And now there's more.
Just a few more. I mean, honestly, Mark, the reason really that tipped me into doing podcasting was back when I was in college. I did Top 40 radio, and I loved doing radio. I thought it was one of the best outlets for me to just use my personality and just to have fun and to reach people beyond just face-to-face conversation. And when I got into the 2015-2016 election, and I was a very big supporter of Rand Paul at the time. I got more into writing. I actually joined Austin Peterson's the Libertarian Republic as a contributor at the time, and now I'm an associate editor. But at the time, it's just to write what I was thinking about the politics. And Austin's, gave me an opportunity to basically do a pseudo podcast on the network, which I called Around the Republic, where I was having, weekly discussions with other contributors or editors at the TLR. And what we would do was just discuss what the news was that week. And then I kind of did a few interviews, just, I was like, let's try it out. Let's see an interview. I interviewed John Ziegler, Cliff Maloney, and I'm trying to forget. There's one other person I interviewed as well. But I did some interviews. Oh, it was a Super Mexican from hotair.com. And it was fun because I was like, this is something I can do that's similar to what I did with radio, and I can utilize the medium that I'm the most comfortable with to actually talk about these ideas. And as I kind of got bigger with the podcast on TLR, I started becoming much more of a fan of Lions of Liberty, We Are Libertarians, Johnny Rocket, and I actually had messaged Chris Spangle, and he'd asked me to be on his show a couple times as the associate editor from TLR to discuss some stuff. And I said, hey Chris, I know you'd mentioned if I was ever interested in doing a podcast one day to let you know. Well, would you be open to me joining the network? And Chris, said, well, yeah, that makes sense. You've been doing a libertarian podcast, and we're looking to expand the network. And at the time, it was when Chris was growing the network. So he gave me the opportunity to join We Are Libertarians as the host of the Brian Nichols Show, and started back in January 2018. And honestly, it's been a blast since. I mean, I've gotten one of the things I love the most about my show, it's from just being a host. Honestly, being able to talk to people that are so much smarter than I am. And I know it sounds weird to say, but to have people on my show who are experts in their field, and I can be a listener essentially and ask the questions I know my audience is probably asking, and trying to get a real answer from them. I'm not trying to be a host who's going to give softball questions for the guest to give softball answers, because that's not something I would want to hear as a listener, and I know my audience is going to want to listen to it. So, I mean, just for an example, when I had Justin Amash on my show, I asked him point blank, there are libertarians who just don't get how you can be in favor of obstruction of justice charges when the underlying means of the investigation was improperly founded. And just to have him, answer the question in an open and honest way, I thought that was, more rewarding to not only myself but my audience to hear someone ask the tough question and have to give a tough answer. So yeah, I mean, long story short, Mark, it's been a heck of a ride so far. I've had people from elected officials to politicians to entrepreneurs, economists, all the way through. I mean, it's been a great opportunity to talk to really interesting people and to ask a lot of fun questions that I know I'm always thinking in the back of my head, and I'm sure my audience is as well. So, yeah, I mean, we just had Arvin Vora on here. It'll be coming up here on the 9th. I had a conversation with Tim Preuss from Straight No Chaser. He's going around the United States right now trying to figure out what happiness is. That was one of my conversations I had last week. Justin Amash on my show, that was a blast. Larry Sharp, and the list goes on. It's just, if you're looking for a great chance to listen to some really fun people, if you go to my backlogs, you have a treasure trove of people you can listen to. And I'm always having more guests come on. I have a great August lined up for folks already with guests coming on the next few weeks. So yeah, it's been a blast, Mark. And people like you, I've had you on my show, and it was a blast to have you on my show because the reason I think we both are doing what we're doing is because we want to see the message get out there to more people, and I think we're trying to use the means that we feel most comfortable with, and we think is the most successful. And I mean, I don't want to speak for you, but I know for myself, I found just looking at the download numbers, I'm like, wow, like this is having an impact, and it's exciting and refreshing to see that there are people who are reaching out to listen to the show from all over the world. It's exciting, and it really gives me a good feeling for liberty, just the movement for liberty going forward to the future for sure.
Yeah, download numbers are an interesting beast because your bar and your expectation keeps getting higher and higher as download numbers go up.
Yep.
So then you keep expecting more and more and more. But the way I still always think of it, even when we first started, maybe my first episode, maybe 40 people downloaded it. I don't know. It certainly wasn't a lot. Nobody even knew who I was. I had no name. I just published a podcast basically out of nowhere. We had a website for a couple of years, but it wasn't huge or anything. And but the way I think about it, even those 40 people, if I just imagine myself in a room hosting this conversation with 40 people sitting there intently listening and not distracted by anything else, I mean,
right?
even that alone is kind of amazing. Like I've never even been in a room really where 40 people were listening to me. So that's already like bigger than real life. So I mean, the fact that it's gotten obviously much bigger than 40 people at this point. I mean, if I picture the number of people that download an episode in a room now, I mean, we need a much bigger room. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I was gonna say like the first time I ever peaked 1,000 downloads, I was like, that's 1,000 people who are listening to not only my show, but listening to the ideas that we're promoting. And I don't know if they're libertarians already, or if they're liberty curious and they just wanted to hear a different perspective. I mean, I know for a fact that I had a democratic socialist on my show, and I would say at least half the downloads were from the people that he directed to listen to the show, who they themselves were democratic socialists. And I actually said I was on a show, I forget whose show it was. It may have been Caleb Francis back a couple of months ago. I said I kind of expected people from the Democratic Socialist camp, the Bernie Bro camp, to listen to that episode, and I never went in with the intention of trying to change those people's minds, but I just wanted to give them a chance to listen to somebody who's not a Democratic Socialist and say, oh, okay, they're not the crazy racists that I have been told they are. They're not the people who hate the poor people that I've been told they are. They don't hate the planet like I've been told they do. And that, just alone to know that I reached those people, that was exciting, and it was refreshing to know that they are getting something different than what they've been force-fed for the past, how many years of their lives in either the Bernie Sanders campaign or following into this democratic socialist trap. I mean, I'm glad to see that we're having such an impact, myself, yourself, Chris over at We're Libertarians, and the rest. I mean, Johnny Rockets just launched his brand new podcast for the Launchpad, and that's a fantastic show. I mean, there's so many great shows out there of very persuasive, but also just very knowledgeable libertarians, from Tom Woods to Jason Stapleton and all those in between. Like, there is entirely a role for all of us. And I love the fact that we are in such a great tight-knit group of podcasters that we rarely, if ever, toss stones at each other. We're all very supportive. We do our part to raise each other up and, to have each other on our shows, to share each other's podcasts. And that's it makes me, feel even more so like I'm part of something beyond just an idea. I'm part of a movement, a family. And I'm excited to see where we're going to be 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now.
I think podcasting, especially libertarian podcasting, maybe just because we are part of a larger community that is anybody that's passionate about these ideas and takes time out of their day to talk about them in any way, is obviously like fighting against the grain. So we kind of have a camaraderie with each other in that sense, that we're all sort of fighting for the same things, even if we spend a lot of time disagreeing in between there. So I don't look at other libertarian podcasts, even though it's technically true, as my competition. It is technically true. I mean, we're all fighting for ear time. people only have so many minutes in the day to have those earbuds in and be listening to podcasts. So it technically is true that we're competition, but I love to promote other podcasts. I love to promote other libertarian podcasters because even though I wish just everybody in the world just I wish everybody listened to Lions of Liberty. I wish everybody on the planet did, and maybe, some aliens or whoever. I just wish as many people as possible listen to it. But it's possible. It's not even possible. It's a fact that my voice, Brian's voice, Odie's voice isn't going to be for everybody. And I know that not everybody that stumbles their way upon this podcast, they might like it, they might love it. Hopefully they love it and stick around, but not everybody's going to stick around. I know that. Right. But what I do hope is at least they'll get interested enough in the ideas and maybe learn about some other podcasts. Maybe they'll hear Chris Spangle and he's more their style. Maybe they hear Roger Paxson. Maybe he's more their style, or Johnny Rocket. There's so many places these guys that people can be sent. And I just want more people to be inspired by somebody to get more interested in these ideas and become their own passionate vehicles in their own lives, because we're at the point where we need everybody we can get. We need to convince more and more people to not only believe in these ideas and be excited about them, but to, going back to what we discussed earlier, understand how to persuade people and understand how to really spread these ideas and get them out to people so they do start saying, okay, libertarians, it's actually like these people down the street I know that are just like totally normal and cool. It's not just the crazy people off on the side, who want to destroy the environment and, all those terrible things. I think that is the biggest challenge we face. So the more great media out there, especially in this day and age where everything is so niche, the better. And, because you mentioned earlier, you don't want to avoid tough questions, on your show. I'd be remiss if I didn't try to toss something your way.
All right.
So I'm curious, you did kind of mention that you described yourself as a voluntarist now, but do you formally peg yourself in any one camp? Would you go as far as to call yourself an anarcho-capitalist, or would you be more comfortable saying you are a minarchist still because you're kind of still figuring it out? If you had to choose a label, I guess, or you don't have to, I guess. I'm not going to put a gun to your head. If you had to, where would you? But if not, why? And where do you fall?
Yeah, I've definitely found myself kind of float on the path of libertarianism back and forth, actually. I mean, at one point, probably earlier this year, I was much more in the ANCAP kind of mentality. But then, I don't know, as I see more and more of the issues that are happening at the border, I got more back, I guess, more towards like the minarchist camp, thinking like there has to be some organization that is at least having either borders or national defense or whatever it may be. And honestly, Mark, I think I'm more like a classically liberal voluntarist, but I don't know. I find myself changing what I would identify as I just learn more, and as I speak to more people and I hear different perspectives. And I think that's one thing. If I could just get rid of the label for a second, is that I think we as libertarians, and I'm not trying to shoot down your question, but in general, we need to just kind of ignore where I self-identify on this scale of libertarianism, and just embrace the fact that we're all libertarians together. We all want limited government or no government. We want to see the state as small as it can be. I mean, Jason Stapleton gives a great analogy, and it's like we are on a school bus going through space, right? And we're all on a trip to liberty. Like that's where we're going. And listen, we are so far away from where we want to go. Like right now, we're on this bus together. Like as soon as we get to almost to our destination, like you can start hopping out where you find that you're more suited to go than at the very end, wherever the end game may be. But in the meantime, we're a team. We're on the school bus together, flying through space. We're on a screaming metal death trap of a school bus, and we have to stick together regardless of if you're an ANCAP or a minarchist, or if you're a classical liberal or voluntarist or an agorist. I don't care. We're in this together, and let's stop focusing on these minute differences. And I know ANCAPs or more anarchists will say in general it's not minute, it's super important. Okay, sure, but at the end of the day, I view you more as an ally than I would view a progressive. So, we need to stick together and stop sacrificing our own to say, I am the most libertarian. That doesn't accomplish anything at the end of the day. That's not productive. It doesn't help what we're doing, All
right, so what you're telling me is you're a statist?
I'm 100% a statist. if here you go. Here's a clip for you. I'm 100% a statist, Mark. Yes, absolutely.
All right, that's my viral audio that we're going to use to promote this program.
Again, I've been called worse.
No, I mean, I do agree with you in the sense that, I believe it is important to sort of deep dive in our beliefs, as we were talking about earlier, do these exercises and figure out what the philosophical correct answers are along the way. But just like when we're talking to normal people, when we're talking to each other, I think we have to have the same approach. I'm going to show you what I believe. I'm going to tell you what I believe. I'm going to engage in that conversation, but I'm not going to make you my enemy any more than I'm going to make the progressive down the street, which is everybody on the street because I live in Los Angeles.
I'm in Philly.
I'm not going to make them my enemy. Yeah, I'm not going to make them my enemy either. I'm just going to do my best to talk to everybody like humans, whether they're a progressive, a Democrat, Republican, some kind of libertarian, or what have you.
If you ever say the words in a conversation, "No, you're wrong," then you've already
It's over.
It's over. Like, you've already lost the ability to talk to somebody. Like, you should never ever get to that point. Like, ask stupid questions. Like, it might feel stupid to you because you know the answer, but like, you need to help guide people to get the answer themselves. You can't just be like, "You're wrong, here's why." Say, well, can you explain why? Like, can you maybe elaborate on your point a little bit more, and get them to really explain out why they believe what they believe. I mean, I'll give you an example. I had a really good friend who they're public school teachers, and they were discussing how they were against. Against charter schools. I think it was we were discussing at the time. Which, don't get me wrong, I know there's issues with charter schools, but just for this expression, I'm trying to get baby steps. So I was they said that they didn't like charter schools because they were like pseudo segregation, and then they said that they were worse education going to the charter school than they would have if they went to the public school. And I was like, well, okay, let's walk through this. Why would somebody want to choose on their own to go to a worse off school on top of being a segregationist school? Like, let's rationalize this position, and they couldn't. And like, I saw shit like that. I didn't expect. I had to think about this. Like, I have to, because it doesn't go in line with what I've been told I should be promoting as a Democrat or what have you. So that's why it's so important to get people to start talking to you and not being so in their face, because you need to help them like get to the realization on their own why they believe what they believe.
Very true, and I think those are good words to end on. So, Brian, before I let you go, why don't you just wrap up real quick and give everybody the full wraparound of how they can find the Brian Nichols Show and any associated projects or anything like that you'd like to promote. Feel free to plug away.
Absolutely. So if folks want to go ahead, first and foremost, the Brian Nichols Show, you can find it anywhere really podcasts are. But more importantly, head over to Apple Podcasts just once if you could to, number one, subscribe, but number two, rate a review. That'd be great. And preferably 5 stars, even though I did say on the show today that I am a status. But
don't be cheapos. Just give the 5 stars.
Yes, 5 stars, please. But if you're interested in following me on social media, Twitter is definitely my most active medium. It's at @bnicholsliberty. But I've been doing a lot of fire memes over at my Facebook page, which is also at @bnicholsliberty. So if you want some awesome memes, head over there and check those out. And then as for Patreon, also at @bnicholsliberty. If they want to be if you want to find yourself being one of my super listeners, $5 a month is great. But if that's too much, a one-time PayPal donation is also fantastic, and you can just go ahead and find that link on my website, or you can just go to brian@briannicholsshow.com. That'll bring you right to the website, so you can click that one-time PayPal donation link. But yeah, I mean, my shows, Mark, are every Friday. I usually have my show come out sometime in the morning so people can listen to it as they go to work on their commute. And any projects, I mean, honestly, the biggest project I had was my conversation with Justin Amash most recently, where I was, really his first interview post saying that Trump should be looked at for being impeached. And that was, a just awesome discussion to not only talk to him, but then it opened up doors for me, which is cool. Like, I got quoted in Vanity Fair, which I was like, what? Vanity Fair? That's insane. And I did.
Having Justin Amash on is great. We got quoted in The Hill and Forbes. It was like, wow, what? That's crazy.
Oh no, like,
now real publications are actually like acting like we're real. Like, what's going on here?
If you get like the Google notifications, like for like Google alerts, like the day after.
I should really do that.
Oh my god, the day after I did the interview with Justin Amash, it was like bing, bing, bing. So it's nice though, because usually I share my name with the now current ambassador to Zimbabwe. So almost always I get a notification. And it's like,
what's that guy up to again?
I know. I'm like, oh, look at the ambassador, not me. And then like the day after, I was like, I was more important on Google than the ambassador, and I'll put that little feather in my cap. So, but no, it's at @bnicholsliberty on Twitter is where you can go ahead and find me most of the time. If you like snarky Twitter responses and just, I like to be fun.
Twitter's become my favorite spot to hang out to on the internet. I could just be short and witty, yes, and all those fun things.
You have to be clever. You can't like go on a 15-page Facebook post. It's like, okay, you have 280 characters now. You have this. I try to keep them 140 still, but like you have this short little succinct thing you have to do, and you have to get your point out quick. And hey, that's honestly what libertarians have to do in a bumper sticker world. We gotta put some bumper sticker stuff out there, but then when people ask questions, actually answer their questions.
All right, well, Brian Nichols, has been awesome talking to you. Keep up the great work over at the Brian Nichols Show, and of course, I know you will. Just keep on roaring.
Always.
All right, my Liberty kittens, I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Brian Nichols. I have conversations, well, I have them all the time in life, but I specifically have them in this format, in podcast form, every single Monday here on the flagship Lions of Liberty podcast. But it's not just me. There's more. But wait, there's more. That's right, because I'm not just alone here. I have friends. I have other Lions of Liberty who help me to bring you the greatest libertarian variety show on earth after the flagship show on Monday, where I bring you interviews with leaders in the libertarian movement. You get Brian McWilliams every single Wednesday, where he slaps you upside the head, which is technically an NAP violation if it was literal, but it's not. It's metaphorical, where he slaps you upside the head with his weekly shot of comedy, culture, and liberty on the can't-miss, always hilarious Electric Liberty Land. And we end the week with a dose of inspiration as John Odermatt brings you some incredible stories breaking down the tragedies and injustices and triumphs over the broken criminal justice system on Felony Friday. There's something for everyone here. Hopefully it's all for you, and that's why you got to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a darn thing. We keep coming at you 3 days a week, each and every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, without fail, without vacations, without holiday breaks, without emergency room visits. I don't know. Maybe we'll go to the emergency room. I don't want to jinx us. But even if we did, I guarantee you we'd find a way to get these shows out. We are the most consistent. Oh, I shouldn't say it. That's a trademarked phrase, isn't it? Anyway, we're very consistent with our content, okay? Let's just put it that way. We are the most consistent libertarian content producers out there. I feel confident in saying that. We don't take breaks. We don't take time off. And we do even more content behind the paywall, which is how most of the show is funded over at patreon.com/Lions of Liberty. We do tons of bonus segments, bonus shows like Conspiracy Corner, which we hope to be bringing back fairly soon, as well as the Legion of Liberty Dune, Degenerate Gamblers. There's just so much fun. And it only costs you $5 a month to get access to all our bonus audio and video content. You can also join as a Lion Cub. Just kind of dip your toe in and get a feel for what it's like to be a member of the Lions of Liberty Pride for as little as $2 a month. All that gets you is access to our secret Facebook group, but that it does include some live streams. We do some live streams of the Liberty Draft shows, of our drunken Democratic debate recaps. So let's just sort of dip your toe in the water. But let me tell you, once you're in the Lion's Den, you're going to want to go deep. You're going to want to go all the way. You're going to want to get all our great video content, our extra t-shirts, that discount you get on our coffee. There's so much you can get at various levels of joining the Lions of Liberty Pride. So please do check that out. Patreon.com/Lions of Liberty. Every little bit helps us bring you a bigger and better show and help us go to events like PorkFest, like the Libertarian National Convention, which we'll be doing next year, and hopefully more and more and more. The more support we can get, the greater product we're going to send back at you. It really is that simple. And that is about all the hawking I have to do today. It's been a blast. I hope you enjoyed the program. Stick around for Wednesday for Brian McWilliams, and of course, wrap things up with Odie on Felony Friday, this coming Friday. Until next time, my friends, live long and live free.